My name is Tavae Samuelu. I'm the Director of Community Initiatives and Grant Making at the Asian Pacific Fund. And I will be serving as your moderator for this first panel. Now, the topic for this panel is Unpacking the Drivers of Unwellness. Yeah. So I want to go ahead and bring out our speakers. We're all ready to support them? Yeah? Cool. So first, we have the amazing, the phenomenal, the incredible Dr. Connie Wan. Dr. Connie Wan is the executive director and co-founder of AAPI Women Lead. She has published several books and articles in addition to appearing in Democracy Now!, MSNBC, NPR, and a range of podcasts. She is a former sex worker, high school and college educator, anti-sexual assault advocate, and organizer. Dr. Connie Wan continues to co-facilitate community-driven research across the country with community-based organizations just like the ones here in the room today. This research really focuses on racial and gender violence. Connie is also a daily meditation practice and is a yoga instructor who has trained in Muay Thai and kickboxing. So she can bring you peace, but she also can kick your ass. Please welcome Connie Wan. Next, we have the wonderful human who opened our space today with such a powerful blessing. Kevin Faleulu Niuatoa is the youngest of 8 children to Reverend Fautua Sr. and Mata'o Niuatoa. He is a proud Samoan American who was born and raised here in the Bay Area in Hunters Point, Bayview, San Francisco. Kevin is the pastoral care counselor for the Pacific Islander Wellness Initiative of RAMS. He is also a certified adult and youth mental health first aid instructor and facilitates psychoeducation workshops aimed at achieving whole health. Please give an applause for Kevin. Yes, we've all got our comfort cats today. Last but not least, we have Dr. Amy Grace Lam. Dr. Lam is a Canadian-born Chinese-American genderqueer nonprofit strategist, healer, and artist. For over 20 years, Amy has explored health, healing, and transformation through innovation, creativity, and blending Eastern and Western frameworks and strategies. Amy is currently the chief program strategist at the Korean Community Center of the East Bay, where she and her coworkers have integrated K-drama, Tai Chi, senior street smarts, community advocacy, art, and holistic wellness to promote healing in a culturally responsive manner for immigrants and refugees. Please give it up for Amy. If there's anything you take away from today, it's comfort cats, yeah? So we want to start off, I know you all have read their bios, you've heard a little bit about them as individuals, but we want to welcome our speakers to talk a little bit about the organizations that have brought them here to this space. It was really critical to APF to make sure that we were highlighting all of the affiliates who really ground us in our work and are the closest to the issues that we want to solve. We'll start off with Dr. Connie Wan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Connie Wan, Dr. Connie. Hi. Okay, so there's friends out here, which makes me really, really happy. Thank you, APF, for hosting us and creating this amazing event. Let me get into kind of the nitty-gritty of what one of your affiliates does. So that's AAPI Women Lead. All right, so that's the beautiful intro page. And then here's our mission statement. Quickly, I'll just read these through with you all. We are an organization that seeks to end violence against Asian, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, women, girls, non-binary communities. And we do this work through community-driven research and education. It's very, very important that the emphasis is community-driven. We do it through collective study and cultural narrative shifts, through healing, wellness, and power building. We are led by women, queer, disabled, and survivors all across both our advisors, our staff, our volunteers, and more. Our work to end violence is intersectional. Like I said earlier, it's community-driven. We're based upon transformative justice, survivor-centered work, and frameworks. And then, of course, our work is in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color. I emphasize that quite a bit because we are not about simply identity politics, but our politics, or our identities, is based upon our politics. These are a couple of our programs. Our programs include the following: the cultural narrative shift, the research, the storytelling, healing, wellness, power building, and then our annual I'm Ready conference that's actually happening here, September 21st. So I hope to see all of you here, your friends, your aunties, your uncles. Come, bring them, please. And one of our biggest pride and joys is the first ever intergenerational participatory action research project. And the reason why I say it's first ever is because I came up with the term intergenerational. It's kind of how I know. And the big thing about that, y'all, is that there's an idea that all of our ages and all of our generations have so much knowledge that we need to be sharing with one another. And one of the other things that's very important to this IPAR project is that it's community-driven, meaning our researchers are from the community, right? Our researchers are trained by our community experts, our community scholars, our university scholars on a number of issues or frameworks. But these were some of our, this was our first cohort of researchers, and you all can see that list right here. For some who would like some words, we are people from Massachusetts, from American Samoa, from Wisconsin, from Hawaii, from Southern California, from Northern California. And then these are some of our advisors. They're below as well. They're from the university, and they're also from the community. When we did this research project that was national and in the US territories, we asked our community researchers to come and talk with their community after we did some of the research trainings, some of the trainings on violence, some of the trainings on transformative justice. We asked them to do the research with the communities that they come from. And these are some of the findings that come from that. And I also want to say that our staff is here, our senior research coordinator is here, Dr. Catherine. Jenny Wen is here, she's also the co-founder, and they were really instrumental in this research project and this slide. Okay. So one of the findings that I want to read to you all comes from American Samoa against domestic violence in American Samoa, which is to say violence for them is Samoan women and girls may suffer physical and psychological trauma due to gender-based violence, such as intimate partner abuse, sexual harassment, and violence. And efforts to eradicate GBV are crucial, but they can encounter cultural opposition. For Aina Momona, who is from Hawaii, the violence done to the land is the violence done to our people. The violence committed to our land translates over to the violence done to our bodies. So there's, of course, a very important indigenous understanding of violence. And then from our researcher who is based at Asian Women's Shelter, invisibility is often a term used to describe experiences of Asian Americans as well as those of disabled people. The double if not triple erasure that disabled Asian women experience has only been compounded by society's intense desire to suppress the continuing impacts of the pandemic. So for them, violence is intersectional and is also caused by our ecosystem and the failure of some of our public policy or failures of our public health policies. All right, so in overall kind of a big synopsis, the types of violence that our communities experience are not always visible and do not always look and feel the same across our communities. So for us, we were making an intervention on what was becoming very popularized, which was hate. For us, what our experiences were, violence for us were these things that our communities said, often invisible, not things you can capture on television, and definitely not something you can make into hate crime legislation. In these sense, these forms of violence include climate crises, medical neglect, language injustice, and colonization. The root of racial and gender-based violence across our communities is the systemic neglect and systemic abandonment by governmental agencies, institutions, and even members within our own communities. That's what our communities are saying is the violence and the root cause of some of our pain, suffering, and agony. So at AAPI Women Lead, we're big on research, we're big on education, but we're also big on healing and wellness, because we can't just go out here, tell our stories, and just be like, peace out, good luck, right? So we offer these healing and wellness workshops led by our communities. In that sense, we've provided community safety programs, we've provided community care series, we've also hosted healing and wellness events, including our workshops, our transformative justice trainings, our community movie screenings, and our healing spaces. So it's what, back in the day, the nonprofits used to call it the wraparound services, right? Nowadays, we call it holistic. So this is AAPI Women Lead's approach to dealing with violence, naming the violence, and healing and wellness. All right, and then here's the conference that's about to come up. Again, I would love to see you all. September 21st, there's about to be 300-something people, including you all. So feel free to take a picture and be excited. Yeah? Okay. And then, excitingly, the last thing I want to share with you all is that we are launching, based upon our community's asks and their needs and their wants, we're launching a really cool research institute. It's called, so cool, right? It's called the Real Institute, and the Real Institute stands for Research and Education for Advocacy and Liberation. Get it? R-E-A-L. Love it.
Love it.
And this is where we're going to do more research trainings and more cohorts and more educational seminars, online, offline, more healing workshops, more healing symposiums, conferences, etc. Right? So it's the Real Institute hosted by AAPI Women Lead. All right? So the last thing I want to ask you all is to join our movement. This Naming Our Rage research project that we just completed, we launched a research tour. So we're traveling the country, and then we have this beautiful research report. Feel free to scan that QR code, because who doesn't love a good QR code? And then find out more about our organization using that other QR code. Because we just launched our new website. Our little small team made a website. I know. And it took them hella long. See, you get it, right? So please scan that QR code and just look at it at least, right? And then join us. And then, if you want any more information about us, feel free to email us and catch us on the social media platforms. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Connie. You're good. I want to invite Kevin to go ahead and share about your work and your organization.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Niuatoa. I'm with the Richmond Area Multi-Services, the district in San Francisco. And I'm with the population-focused program known as the Pacific Islander Wellness Initiative that's located in Hayward. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share space with these two trendsetters and big people that, with regards to the movement with mental health. The Pacific Islander Wellness Initiative is a program of RAMS that started in 2019. So we're about 5 years now, and we provide prevention and early intervention counseling services to Pacific Islanders within the Alameda County. The good thing about this job or this position with the Pacific Islander Wellness Initiative is that we're able to contextualize mental health and how it would look for Pacific Islanders. Coming on board into this position as an employee of the Pacific Islander Wellness Initiative, I was able to help design and then also utilize different approaches of how to create wellness or bring about wellness within Pacific Islander communities. I noticed that when the question was posed, what are the drivers of unwellness? It was a very complex question. Because the fact, as a Pacific Islander, we show up and we always put positivity forward. So it's very hard at first hand to almost point out what unwellness looks like. I can definitely tell you what wellness looks like for Pacific Islanders. I often think about sitting at a table over a meal, being able to discuss how one's day is going. I often envision and I experience wellness in Pacific Islander communities where you have the solid relationship between the young and the elderly. Wellness for Pacific Islanders is more of a communal attempt or communal focused because we're a communal people. I often think about the term Ubuntu, which is a South African term that's in relation to relativity. I am who I am because you are who you are. And in the same sense, when it comes to Pacific Islander wellness, the focus is on the collective first. Not to say that it negates the individual. That's important. But the forefront is the community, the village. So when I think of unwellness, in contrast, I think of colonialism. I think of the colonial structure where it shifts Pacific Islanders' insight of the communal to the individualistic. And what I mean by that is that although the focus is on the individual, it tends to negate or even dissipate to the point of extinction the idea of community, the idea of the collective, the idea of the communal. So unwellness for me now, when I see it in Pacific Islander communities, is the disconnect between the elder and the young. The disconnect is reflective of language, not being able to translate these big mental health terms that Western society has to describe who communal people or who Pacific Islanders are. I can sit here and tell you all types of stats, but then in the same sense too, since we're in Talanoa, I've also recognized that aggregated data, although it labels us together with Asian Americans, we're still invisible. And that's the harm. The harm in aggregating data, because now you don't know how Pacific Islanders are unwell. Heck, I'm a Pacific Islander not knowing what it is that was measured or the data that was captured that determines how unwell I am based on the colonial structure. Root causes of this has a lot to do with colonialism when it comes to Pacific Islanders, because our mindset and our perspective have shifted. It has transitioned, and in a lot of the times, it's sad. The only reason why is because I'm a part of the younger group, but I also have nephews and nieces and people that are peers, and it brings tears to your eyes, to my eyes, definitely, because there's data that's supposed to be helping us, give us the necessary resources so that way we can effectively operate in this society. But yet, we're invisible. You don't know. So the joy that I get out of working with Pacific Islanders through the Pacific Islander Wellness Initiative is that I'm able to help claim what mental health looks like for Pacific Islanders. I cringed, and I was telling in my prep talk with Tavae, I cringe on the term of reclaim and redefine because it insinuates for Pacific Islanders that we've claimed mental health according to the colonial structure, and so we're reclaiming it. How can we reclaim something that we didn't even claim in the first place? So this work, when they're saying how do we redefine claiming mental health for us, there's a concept that's universal in the Pacific Islands. It's known as VA. And one of our community partners, the Samuelu Wellness Initiative, SEDC, they emphasize it highly because VA is wellness for Pacific Islanders. What you've seen this morning with the Hawaiian chant, it was to create the va, to nurture the physical space. But as you sit in this physical space that we're nurturing, you also nurture the temporal space, le va, between you and the person that you're sitting next to. So it's that we find balance in what wellness means for Pacific Islanders. The temporal space, le va. In Samoan, it's known as va fealuai, va tapoia. These are the vas that we are constantly are always being mindful of when we're seeing each other, which is why we always put positivity forward when you see any Pacific Islander at any event, because they're mindful of the va, the communal va. So when we created programs or workshops for Pacific Islanders to help not only address the stigma of reducing mental health stigma, but also contextualizing what mental health looks like. So we start to use terms that we're familiar with: talanoa, discuss, dialogue, weaving. These are skills that we do. And it's those type of contextualized programs, and even my position. So RAMS, this is another deep, dark secret. Christina, wherever you're at, and now everyone's gonna know. The pastoral care counselor position that I hold is a redefined, contextualized position of an approach that we're using to help raise awareness and also capture more wellness amongst Pacific Islanders. Pacific Islanders are very spiritual people, a majority of them have a faith that they're associated with. A lot of the times they go to clergy members for mental health services. But who do the Pacific Islander clergy members go to when they need help with their mental health services? So my background is in divinity and theology. I had no idea I was going to tie it into mental health. But I do thank God, according to my faith, for the opportunity to weave both together. Because now this position that I have as a pastoral care counselor, I'm able to help clergy members who are helping our people, help equip them on another approach of how we can approach wellness, contextualize. And it's very important. And that's the other reason why I'm so thankful for RAMS. Because RAMS see their partnership with the community to help hear the community needs, to know that the community knows what the problem is, and they hold the solutions. They cater to that. And if you're listening, as a provider, Kaiser, you tap in. I'm not saying this because I work for RAMS. No, I'm saying it because it's the hard work and the ability to do the hard work contextually. And it's through this program that I'm able to say confidently, we've helped elder pastors that are Pacific Islanders understand that there's a secular part to them, that they have a secular extension outside of the brick and mortar. That was the most complicated thing for us because it was always like, oh no, we don't need your help. But to be able to pierce that barrier and to build a bridge, it means so much to our people as Pacific Islanders. And I say it with joy because now it's becoming a thing. I wanted to end with this. Just to keep in mind, one of the schools we're working with, the high school, the superintendent and the school board invited their quote-unquote Polynesian, I hate these Polynesian, Melanesian, Micronesian terms because they're colonial, and they need to be unlearned. They invited a Pacific Islander dance group from the high school to come and perform entertainment for the Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month last month. And so the kids, they all riled up the dancers, and then they went. To the superintendent and the school board's surprise, the kids did not come in their dance costume, their dance attire, or anything. What they did come with was a PowerPoint presentation. Their PowerPoint presentation flew up, and it showed the stats of Asian and Pacific Islander education-wise. And two of the main dancers, these are students, stood up with the courage in front of the school board with the superintendent there and said, "This, although it looks like we're successful, is not me. I'm struggling. What can you do to help me?" That said a lot to me at the end of the day, because these were individuals that that was receiving services from our program. To know that you have these younger generation kids who are wanting identity, who are wanting belonging, who are wanting culture, demand for it, it means a lot to us in our Pacific Islander cultures, because they don't have voices, and there's no platform or space. But for them to demand such, I think the same goes for us too when it comes to mental health. So I invite you, as you sit at these tables that discuss the mental health wellness for Pacific Islanders, that you acknowledge the discrepancies in the aggregated data, that you know and you name the fact that colonialism and raw and data injustices is the reason why you are not capturing Pacific Islander data at its raw core. And to invite Pacific Islander community members who know what's going on with them. I think we're past the part of where we sit and let people talk for us. I thank God for this position and this opportunity, because now we're able to voice what our community is saying. They're saying we are here, we matter, and we owe it to ourselves to be well. So I share that with you all. I invite you all to continue to be our ally or become our ally and advocate for us in these spaces that you don't see a person with a kukui nut or an aloha shirt. Advocate for us, reach out for us, and partner with us. We know, our community know what's best for them. We just don't have the opportunity and the space to do it. But you're able to give us that opportunity. Programs such as RAMS, celebrating 50 years, and they're still doing wonderful work as this by helping programs and communities that are unheard, underserved, to be able to mobilize and create something that works for them. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And remember, at the end of the day, Pacific Islanders are here. Help us.
You can tell Kevin's a pastor because he took us to church. You feel it? No? Amy, join us in Talanoa. Join us on the mat.
Land of opportunity. I remember you calling me in my dreams, America, the land of the brave and free. I remember calling you in my dreams, America, the beautiful, in my bones. Waking me up from my sleep, sweet memories intoxicating my mind. You promised me freedom. You offered me honey and wine. You gave me this new life, and then I remembered I'm by myself, broken and alone. You left me. I just wanted a good and stable job, save up enough money to send back home. I just wanted a good and stable job, give my family a better life, and hear all the people say we made it. But they know nothing at all about what it takes to make it in this great country of ours. I'm just a working machine. I smile to all the customers all day long, and then wake up and do it again. You left me. I know I should just be grateful to be here. And I am very grateful to be here. Money grows on trees, I heard them say. a bunch of American lies. You promised me freedom. You offered me honey and wine. You gave me this new life. And then I remembered. I'm by myself working my fingers to the bones. America, you left me. No matter how hard I try, they've got me stuck here in the same place. So I just keep my head down, waiting tables all day long. But I can't give up just yet. No, I can't. America, you're still in my dreams. America, America, you left me. This is a poem that speaks to a lot of the experiences. I don't know what's next. How to go next. Of a lot of the immigrant and refugee communities that we serve at KCCB. And like everyone on stage is speaking about today, this model minority myth, this data tends to paint a very strange picture of us that is not the reality of most of us here in this room. And so I wanted to talk really briefly about KCCB. Our table is over here. KCCB's mission is to empower the Korean American and other immigrant communities of the Bay Area for education, services, community resources, and advocacy. You see a bridge there because that's what we like to see ourselves as, a bridge to help Bay Area Asian communities get the critical resources they need at important moments in their lives. KCCB was started in 1977, my birth year, and it was founded by 5 activists with support from the Oakland Korean Methodist Church to assist newcomers as they were adjusting here to the US. So over the past 40 years, KCCB has been reflective of the journey of the Korean community. What's interesting is when you see this, we were really helping people plant roots into this new country. But look how long it took for us to get to talk about mental health in our community, to talk about domestic violence. It took 40 years, sorry. Today, KCCB has expanded beyond supporting the Korean American community. We serve over 10,000 people across 6 Asian languages, and we work across the Bay Area in San Leandro, at middle schools, high schools, colleges, and especially at senior centers and senior housing agencies. For many communities that we've talked about today who've been uprooted, the key thing that they're looking for is stabilization. How can they find a foundation and grow roots here in this country? And so that's what KCCB does. We try to have programs that help folks stabilize and deepen their wellness and empowerment. So a lot of times people come to us because of concrete needs. And that's the reality, right? That is what mental health is. We have life stressors. What's really interesting is Christina was talking today about these depression inventories and scales. And sometimes people are saying, okay, I have depression or I have these symptomatologies, but most time we hold it in. And in our communities, we notice that we hold it in so much that it's almost like a volcano waiting to erupt. But interestingly enough, when you give someone a life stressor scale, we started to notice something different. So we had this group of elders. We asked them, do you experience stress? Do you have depression? No, I'm okay. Like really stoic and strong, right? Everything is good. Everything is good. We're like, okay, let's just talk about stress. So we give them this life stressor scale. It's 43 questions. It's been validated, and it's connected to health. By the end of that time with our seniors, almost all of them scaled in the highest tier of stress. These folks who said everything is okay scored in the 300 range. And the 300 range is related to an 80% chance of having a major health breakdown in the next 2 years. When we probed even more, we learned that most of the seniors in the room knew someone who had died by suicide. And one person in the room knew 4 people, which still gives me chills. But we don't ask. And our measures focus on symptoms, as opposed to community mental health, as opposed to how is your job? How are things at home? How are things at work? And that's what this life stressor scale measured. So we feel like we found a key to unlocking how we learn about what's going right and what's going wrong in our community by using a Western scale, but it's life stressors. So once we get people to talk about their life stress, we help them meet their concrete needs, because that's what we do. That's how we help people get stabilized. And once we do that, we start building trust with them, and then they start disclosing some of their challenges, emotional, family issues, and that's how we connect them to our other programs. So KCCB is very fortunate to have this model, and some of our community members here, organizations, have a similar model, which is called prevention and early intervention. This is a funding model at the state, and I know RAMS is a part of that too, where we have a broader sense of what community mental health means, and we can help people in a much broader way. We help people move from distress to well-being because we don't have to have a diagnosis, because we have flexible services for 12 months as opposed to 12 sessions or 10 sessions. You can keep seeing someone. We can do home visits. We can go to schools. We can talk to somebody in their car. And all of those really make a difference for our community. With this model, we're able to address structural, cultural, and societal issues related to barriers to mental health care. We can do community wellness. We can do Tai Chi practice. We can also talk one-on-one or connect folks with their family. And so that's why it's so important that we hold this prevention and early intervention model here in California. We uplift that. And I know many people in the room today and yesterday were at the state talking about how we need to continue these models of care that are very different than the Medi-Cal model, where you have to have a diagnosis and you only get case management support if you have that diagnosis. So really quickly, one of the great ways that we've been able to address structural barriers at KCCB is developing our mental health access pipeline, Asian pipeline program, where we train bilingual and bicultural Asian therapists, mental health workers, MSWs, MFTs, to really go out in the community and learn how do you do community mental health work. Some of our stigma reduction work, as we've mentioned before, we are allowed to bring Tai Chi, wellness, acupressure, into the work with our communities. We use K-drama so that we can talk to our seniors about what stigma looks like, what mental health looks like in elders, from kind of like an outsider perspective, and then chit-chat about it in group, similar to Talanoa Circle. And one of the most important things about community mental health is giving voice, right? Advocating, speaking up for ourselves. And so that's what we've been able to do to debunk the model minority myth. Our seniors have been active telling the Board of Supervisors, this is what mental health looks like in our community. This is what you need to fund. With all the anti-Asian violence that's been happening here in Oakland, we even had a group of seniors write a letter in Chinese and English back to the housing agency of what they need for community safety. And that really made them feel so empowered, because before they felt just broken. They couldn't leave, their residencies, and they didn't know what to do. But in being in circle, talking about it, and coming up with this advocacy strategy, at least they could give their voice back. So the last thing I wanted to close with, let's just start on this slide. We are able to do art therapy at KCCB, and that's really important for so many of our cultures where we may not be used to talking about mental health, or where verbal communication may not be the only strategy, where we connect heart to heart, where we connect non-verbally. And so this is a 15-year-old client. Oh, can we go back for a sec? A 15-year-old client of ours who's a first-generation Chinese-American student with an eating disorder. And first day of therapy, she was asked, what's your favorite day look like? And this is her favorite day. She's going to the movies with her friends. She has boba. She likes reading. She's, doing the Ferris wheel thing, enjoying maybe Alameda County Fair. But she's able to say what she wants. But look at the stick figures and how kind of controlled, she is when she talks. After 7 months of art therapy, where she was able to increase her self-confidence, to increase her body image, and to actually confront her bully at school, this is the photo and the image that she created with watercoloring. When I look at that, it brings tears to my eyes. because that's the journey to wellness. And when you mentioned that question, Kevin, about what does wellness look like to us, just having this youth give an example of what it's like to be vibrant, to be free to be yourself, and to be connected in your heart, your mind, and your spirit. And so I just wanted to close by, if folks are open to it, just taking a deep breath and breathing into our hearts and connecting with what wellness looks like for you. And connect with what wellness looks like in your community. And just sit in your heart and feel it. See all the beautiful work that you all have been doing with each other and for our greater communities. And then on the count of 3, we're going to breathe out those intentions of wellness into the room. 1, 2, 3. And just let those bubbles of all these intentions of community, health, wellness, and healing be centered in our space today and inform all the conversations that we're going to have and lifting up our communities and their wellness. Thank you.
Actually, Chase, do you mind if we keep the, thank you. I just feel like it's good for us to just see what healing looks like while we're talking to each other this whole time. Also, where were you all when I was 15? My God. I might not have made it to this stage if I knew them at 15, honestly. I appreciate you all because of all of your brilliance. A lot of questions I have you've really answered, but there's some threads I want to pull at. So one, I want to foreshadow to you all, start getting your questions ready because your cue is coming up to step to the mic. And I know you have a lot of questions because we have a lot of wisdom up here. And I also, because we have time, actually want to invite you all to ask questions of each other because I saw you deeply engaging and nodding and in such agreement. And even if you were in disagreement, like trying to figure out how to hold each other while we're here. Connie, I want to ask, because you had started to talk a little bit in talking about the report that you all have, the AAPI report, but as you're thinking deeply, like, what does unwellness look like for the communities that you serve, especially given that you shared there are a lot of ways in which folks are forced to perform compulsory wellness, maybe even mask if it's unsafe to be unwell in front of folks. So I wonder if you could share with us, for the communities that AAPI Women Lead serves, what does unwellness look like? How can folks see it and look for it?
Back on the mic. So I think there's a couple of things. It's a great question. I had a number of statistics, but I think you all can look those statistics up. I think what is very important for a few things, to identify who it is that AAPI Women Lead works with, right? As a community-driven research organization, education organization, as one that was very adamant about healing and wellness, we work with all survivors of AANHPI identity. And our primary focus is survivors of multiple forms of violence, right? And so in that sense, as we saw in the research, that means that we've worked with people who name climate crisis as violence. We name people who have, they've named linguistic violence as a type of violence that they've experienced, meaning when they are survivors of gender-based assaults, when they go to the courts and there's no language assistance, that's a form of violence for them. And or there's no language to translate the violence that they've experienced. It's untranslatable. Our immigrants and our refugee folks have said this according to their research, right? And then our Pacific Islanders and Native Hawaiians have echoed that finding to say that they also, the colonizers' language is not their language to articulate the violence that they too are experiencing. It's not their language, and there is no translation. Those are the folks that we work with. And then we also work with people who are disabled, who have been disabled by domestic violence, right? Who are also survivors of disability injustices in this country, right? By this country. Those are the people that we also work with across Asian, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities. And then I want to name, and this is very important for me to say, for me as a Vietnamese woman born here in Oakland, right? And this is where people from Oakland say hootie hoo or whatever. But people who are from Oakland, it's very important because I was born in Highland Hospital. There you go. I heard it. There's very few of us, but we rep. I think that's important because for us, we work with people who come from the intersections of being poor working class, children of immigrants, children of refugees, right? That's very, very important. And then I say for myself as a survivor, we created our programs based upon our own experiences here in the United States as victims of the United States. Those are the people we work with, right? I also say this, and I was telling them in the back, I'm clinically diagnosed with depression and anxiety. So I joked with them and I was like, I'm clinically crazy. Clinically diagnosed with crazy. And this is why I say community-driven research and analysis and frameworks is so important, because I know as a survivor and someone who has these diagnoses that our stories and our analyses, not just our stories, but our analyses of the root causes of the violence that we've experienced is integral to any change. Integral, right? These are the people that we're working with. And one of the things that I also think is very important is, you know, you were saying, like, what does unwellness look like? Or you asked that question. And I think there's statistics, you know, 25, 35, 65, all the things. Great, we'll look it up. And then I also say unwellness looks like we actually think this place is gonna change. That's us being very unwell. I wanna be like colloquially, because I'm clinically diagnosed, I can say this. Are we crazy? What of this place? After 500, 600 years of hurting and killing and stealing peoples and lands and genocide across here, the territories, across our homelands, do we think it's going to change? That to me is the epitome of unwell, right? I also think unwellness looks like us being in our communities and denying to ourselves that we are not, that we are well, right? Per your research, right? Your organization study on the elders saying that they're fine. What is unwell is that we have not provided our communities with with the tools to help us understand that we are survivors of systems and institutions that have committed violence against us. What makes us unwell and what looks like unwellness is us blaming ourselves, is the DSMs that we get. And then we're somehow supposed to, you know, solve the DSM that nobody understands. That's us being unwell, but that unwellness has been imposed upon us, right? It's unwell that we are now newly addressing mental health after decades upon centuries of being here and being this country's survivors. Now we're talking about it? After COVID? After you saw the end of almost all the things? But what helps us is that our communities come together to actually do something about it. It's taking us too long. The suffering that we see in our elders when they're quiet, or even our babies, our cousins, that's unwell. Or the fact that we, you know, put it on our families or our individuals to take care of it by themselves, even to go to the clinic by themselves. That's us as a community being unwell. We put it on each other to fix yourself. Go to the store by yourself. Elders, our family lives in Chinatown. Our elders, our neighbors are out here by themselves, falling on, like, you know, the sidewalk. So we can talk about the street crimes or the street hate, cool. But what about the fact that they are poor, selling cans? Every Friday, my sister and my mom goes here to Chinatown, and our elders are selling cans of food, 3 cans for $1. That is what society has done to our families and our communities. It's the epitome of unwell. Not because our people are unwell, this place is unwell. This place is cruel and unwell. And our families are its symptoms. And are its survivors, we're the survivors, we're the victims, all of it. They're out here selling beans for $1. What? Poverty demonstrates to us unwell. That's the stuff that I want us to really think through, that can't necessarily be measured, but can clearly be seen and felt if we train ourselves to understand all of that and then come through to help each other accordingly. That, to me, is what unwellness looks like. This place is fundamentally unwell. Our people would have been fine had you not done the damage to us.
Are you a pastor? That felt like a sermon. Kevin was approving. Kevin was nodding vigorously, like, yes, all the things. So I do want to invite folks to start getting ready we'll take at least 2 to 3 questions from the audience. But at this time, I actually want to invite our panelists. Do you have comments, reactions, questions that you want to ask of each other? Because I know all of you, I think, are just meeting for the first time today. What's coming up for you as you're hearing from each other?
I have to say this when you talk about poverty, because what's unwell is our government and the systems that keep perpetuating us to stay unwell. I don't know if you've all heard that the governor had a May revise of his budget, and that the decisions are being made next week on June 15th, and I think it may be too late. Stacy Hiramoto's in the room, and she might be able to answer that. But I want to talk to you and tell you what's on the cutting board, and this is what makes us unwell. When you say, why are our elders selling cans for $1? The Children and Youth Behavioral Health Initiative, that includes school-linked health partnerships, public education campaigns, youth suicide reporting and crisis, on the chopping block. In-home support services, which is IHSS, for some of you who know that in the social services world, for undocumented Californians with Medi-Cal. This is for elders who need in-home support services, which includes our elders, because many of our communities are undocumented, even though they don't say it, on the chopping block. Cuts to acupuncture as a Medi-Cal benefit starting 2025. Acupuncture is an Asian health modality, on the cutting board. And here we go. Medi-Cal and CalFresh Navigator program that supports underserved communities to get access to basic safety net, which is health, and food. Not only on the cutting board, but counties around the state have already started to pull back from this program because they assume already, because the governor put it on, that it's going to be cut. This is why our communities are not well. The last thing I'll say in terms of measuring, because people are measuring the wrong thing. When you measure symptoms, you measure individuals. Then the problem is inside you. And of course, there are mental health conditions that have a biological and genetic component. But what about the environment? So there's a WHO quality of life scale, because I am a former researcher. I started nerding out on this. But this scale has 4 dimensions: physical health, psychological, social connections, and environment. In the environment section, it asks you, how safe do you feel? What do you think about the living condition that you are living in? Do you have access to transportation? Do you have access to medical care? Do you have any opportunity for leisure activities? This is the scale. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a WHO scale that's been used in many countries and cultures, so we can use it, it's validated. Imagine if we started measuring that. If our communities started doing this environmental scale and talking about how well their environment is. And if we measured environment, we're measuring communities, which means we need to go back to the systems and say, why is our community not doing well? And putting it back on them.
Thank you, Amy. So I want to invite folks, if you want to raise your hand for any questions that you have. We have our wonderful volunteer who's ready to hand you the mic. And then as we are preparing for you, I want to invite Kevin, because I saw that you were nodding and there were some things that you were ready to engage with. Do you want to share any thoughts before we welcome questions?
No, I was just in awe and in agreement with what was being said. Ain't no other way to say it. It was already said.
Any questions? Oh, are we shy now? That's okay. Oh, wait, we have a question back there. Thank you so much. If you go ahead and introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Sure. My name is Shaila. I am the Executive Director of NARICA. We provide supportive services to domestic violence survivors. The whole conversation morning has been very inspiring, thought-provoking. I wanted to, it's a comment and a question. I think hearing all of you, the question that keeps coming to me is, what is it that we're all healing from? And that how are we even recognizing or defining violence? Because there's a tendency to limit it to a certain time period. The recognition of, especially for survivors, the violence that's felt from birth in deeply patriarchal societies or in colonial societies, that's not understood even by the survivor themselves oftentimes. So the conversations we have, I think, helping us as providers, us as community, us as survivors, really explore what is violence and how we are defining it and recognizing it, and how do we go about that to really open it up, not hold it in spaces, not define it by structured concepts, but it's a feeling, like so many things that you were saying, there is just, it's like a second layer on your skin that you wear. So would love to hear any thoughts about that.
Thank you. We'll start with Dr. Connie, because I know you're ready.
I'm like, yo, I got that.
Come here, Coach. I got you.
I only am prepared for that because, just years of experience researching violence, and the area of expertise is violence. But AAPI Women Lead has 3 tiers of how we understand violence, right? We understand it as structural, and by structural, I know you were kind of like, maybe not, but by structural, what we mean is patriarchy. Name patriarchy as the root cause and the enactor of violence. Patriarchy, xenophobia, white supremacy, racism, anti-blackness, homophobia, transphobia, right? Colonialism, imperialism. All of these are structural forms of violence. They shape the way we operate in the world. They are, for some, specifically anti-blackness. It is the air we breathe. And if the air we breathe, and it structures relationships, policies, and institutions, that is centuries upon centuries old. That means we have a lot of work to do and a lot of violence to, quote unquote, heal from or address. Some reparations have to take place. I'll say that much, structurally. Then there's the institutional violence, right? The institutions are enactors of these structures. They make these structures possible. So by institutions, I mean the criminal justice system, right? The immigration system, the mental health industrial complex, yeah? The medical industry, the healthcare industry, the educational institutions. These are institutions that enact violence, that cause violence, and they are informed by those structures, right? So then we have our interpersonal, which is what you're naming, domestic violence, sexual harassment, right? All these interpersonal forms of violence, even street harassment, street violence, interpersonal, right? This plays out at the relational level, all informed by the institutions and the structures. So that when we end up resisting or addressing only the intimate or interpersonal forms of violence, we miss the layers that informed those incidences or those relationships. So we have to address it at multiple levels, right? And to help our communities understand that you're not the problem. You are within this entire structure, right? And we have to address it multi-layered. And I definitely want to name that ableism is huge in the structures. Ableism is huge, and it's absolutely informed through our institutions, all of them, and in our interpersonal, right? Such that we don't even see when we're being ableist. We don't even see that our people are hurting and that they need some diagnoses to get some support, right? So I think these are things, and just generally, not even a diagnosis. We don't even need a diagnosis, just help each other out, right? So I think those are the ways that we help to address the multi-layers that inform each other and the ways that we're actually feeling and suffering again on the inside and the outside. But I also want to name that there's something very, very powerful about our survivors who are subject to these multiple forms of violence. We have incredible insights on what the F to do, right? And exactly what we need and how we were able to survive. That's who people need to call on. Help us to name what's going on, and then help us to come together to stop all of it. You agree, so good, I answered it. Okay, cool. As long as it makes sense to you, right? And your question, I'm glad that worked.
Thank you. I don't want us to stand between you and lunch, so I'm actually going to move us to closing thoughts from our speakers, and then we'll make a couple of announcements. So we'll start with Amy, and then we'll go with Kevin. Some final thoughts that you have to share with folks, especially given who's in our audience right now, right? We've got policymakers here, we've got funders here, we've got your partners in justice, right? Other community-based organizations. What do they need to know, and what specifically can these folks do to support the wellness and healing of our communities?
Break the silence. I think I wanted to add to what you were saying, Connie, all these forms of violence. The systemic thread for me is silencing. Silencing and gaslighting through all the way down to where we don't even believe that we have problems. So in each of those categories that you mentioned, we need to help. In terms of the funders, we need you to help recognize that our communities are underserved and understand why we are not well. We need your funding support in supporting our promising practices, evaluating them, getting the data that we have from the community so we can tell you what is actually going on. So many people have mentioned suicide. Yesterday at the special hearing committee, there were so many people in the room that had been touched by suicide, so many. And so this silencing, saying that our communities don't experience this form of violence, suicide is a form of state violence. We need to address these. For the government and structures in the room, you must invite us to the table. Anytime there is a resource allocation conversation about mental health, public health, community violence, we must be at the table. There are so many times, COVID is a perfect example, where we're not even at the table. So finally, in the back, we have forms at KCCB because we love doing advocacy and speaking up, and we ask you to join us. This summer, we are going back to the Board of Supervisors in Alameda County to talk about our prevention early intervention services, what's been wrong, and how to change and make Prop 1 work for us. So if you're interested in being part of that, please sign there. We also have two over here who Asian Health Services has been the head of our Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Health Equity Coalition. There are many people in the room that are part of it. It's over 50 organizations that are going to the state to talk about language equity, data disaggregation, and mental health. So join our coalition so that they can see they cannot silence us. Thank you.
There's a couple of things that I would like to close out with. The first is, at this point in time, there's no need to be guessing what's well for us anymore. And the second thing is partnership. I failed to mention in the beginning that the reason why our work is effective in our communities is because we are closely partnered with our community partners, the Regional Pacific Islander Task Force, Taulama for Tongans, as well as the Samoan Community Development Center. It's these community partnerships that we're able to see, hear, listen, and meet our community where they're at so we can hear what the problem is, as well as hear what their solutions are instead of guessing. I invite you to partner. partner with us. Partner with the CBO, partners with the community organizations. So that way you can actually know what type of needs assessments needs to be done, what type of surveys needs to be done, how many people you need to hire on or bring on onto an advisory board or bring into the table as Native agents. One approach that I always take away from this whole rude, cruel concept of colonialism is Native agency. Because what they did is that they took indigenous people, took them out, took them to learn them, and then reintegrated them so that way they can serve their people. That works. I'm living proof of it. And thanks to programs such as RAMS, who's been open for 50 years now, we're able to do this hard work. I invite you to partner with these community partners so that way you know, and you don't have to guess no more. You can help disaggregate the data. And if you want to know more, join us. RAMS will be holding a gala coming up in October. Meet with our community partners. And if you don't even want to do none of that, stop by 22712 Foothill Boulevard in Hayward. Because what we do is we eat. Stop by, check out our mural, have a meal with us, say hi and go by. But keep in mind that we're here. And that's all I gotta say. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. That's so good. I'm going there, Foothill. I think the couple of ways that I'd say for us here. One is individually, as individuals, not just as your profession. I think we really need to think through the layers of violence all of our communities have experienced. And I want us to really think through that intercommunally, right? Think that across the diasporas, and that is Asian, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders, and even that we understand as a state-imposed identity, which means we have tons of ethnicities and tribes and communities that underneath all of that. So recognize the layers of violence that all of us have experienced and have survived, and then also our history and legacies of resistance. I think that's very important, because at the start of AAPI Women Lead, that's always been our areas of focus. How are we focusing on the violence, or what is the violence, and how have we resisted? I say this because I don't want people to think that colonialism or imperialism or racism or xenophobia are esoteric. These are real concrete things. These are real concrete forms of violence that have happened in our lives. Almost every single one of us come from those legacies of war and genocide. It's not abstract. We come from it. We're born through it, unfortunately. And then we also recognize it's currently happening today. Multiple genocides, multiple wars. What are we doing to stop it? And are we prepared for the generations of harm? So use that, I think, as a compass for how we relate to ourselves and each other. For the funders and for our policymakers, I invite you to come learn, to come collectively study, because your institutions are a part of the problem. Your institutions and your agencies and what you are representing, unfortunately, are the enactors of violence. Sorry, sir. Right? So in that sense, what are you doing actively to undo the violence from these institutions? And what are you doing to create a different world that is not informed by the structures we just named and are survivors of? That becomes your professional and political obligation and responsibility. And then communally, we had better show the F up for each other. Absolutely. In all the ways possible, we are collectively responsible for one another here and abroad. Always responsible to each other. Somebody's not doing well. Are you okay? How can I help you? What do you need? And ask me for help, and I'll be sure to be there for you. Pretty basic, but you say that across the globe. Those are my remedies.
One more plug?
Well, one more thing. We have a brief. We have a research brief, y'all. I forgot to plug the brief on the violence. So feel free, we could pass it around. Notice these really amazing, powerful people. That's them. They can pass around some of the brief too. I heard a quick whisper, so I forgot.
Thank you all so much. Can we give it up one more time for our speakers?